Live television has a way of stripping away the polish. No edits, no second takes, just a camera, a question, and a reaction the world can't unsee. And on one unforgettable morning on The View, that raw unpredictability collided with one of Hollywood's most carefully guarded young stars. What began as a routine promotional appearance turned into a viral moment when Timothée Chalamet visibly snapped at Joy Behar, and the silence that followed said more than any headline ever could. If you follow moments like this, the ones that shift the tone of a room in seconds, subscribe to Prime Talk, hit like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Because today, we're revisiting a live television exchange that still sparks debate about celebrity pressure, media boundaries, and the thin line between curiosity and confrontation. The setting was familiar. The bright studio lights, the curved table, the unmistakable format of The View, a show built on strong personalities and sharper questions. For decades, it has been a space where celebrities sit not just to promote their latest projects, but to engage in real conversation. Politics, culture, controversy, nothing is off limits for long. And on that day, seated across from the panel, was Timothée Chalamet. By then, Chalamet had already established himself as one of Hollywood's most distinctive actors. His breakout performance in Call Me by Your Name earned him critical acclaim and an Academy Award nomination at just 22 years old. Since then, he had balanced art house credibility with blockbuster visibility, from period dramas to large-scale franchises. He had built a reputation not just for talent, but for composure. Interviews showed him thoughtful, measured, even slightly reserved. He navigated press tours with a careful blend of charm and introspection. Across the table sat Joy Behar, one of the longest-running co-hosts of The View. Known for her directness and willingness to ask uncomfortable questions, Behar has built a career on challenging guests. Whether discussing politics or personal life, she rarely softens her approach. Viewers expect candor from her. Sometimes humor, sometimes friction. That morning, the conversation began as most do. Light laughter, discussion of Chalamet's latest film project, comments about the demands of modern celebrity. He smiled, leaned forward politely, answered in full sentences. The rhythm felt predictable. But live television has its own rhythm, and it can change without warning. What makes moments like this significant isn't just a raised voice or a sharp reply. It's context. It's timing. It's the sense that something unscripted has slipped through the cracks of media training. For actors of Chalamet's generation, image management is constant. Social media amplifies every gesture. A facial expression can become a meme within minutes. A pause can be dissected for days. And The View is not a late-night couch with pre-taped edits. It is broadcast live. That means if tension builds, it builds in real time. Millions watching. No rewind button. As the segment progressed, the tone began to shift. The questions moved away from the safe territory of film promotion. They edged closer to topics that hover around fame itself: scrutiny, public narratives, the pressures of constant speculation. Chalamet's posture subtly changed. His answers grew shorter. The laughter softened. There is a particular kind of quiet that settles over a studio when everyone senses something tightening. It's not dramatic. It's subtle. A delay before applause. A glance between co-hosts. The faint awareness that a line might be approaching. For years, celebrities have walked onto The View knowing that unpredictability is part of the deal. The format encourages discussion, sometimes debate. But it also magnifies discomfort. When a guest feels cornered, the cameras don't cut away quickly. They stay. And that's exactly what happened. Before we get to the precise exchange, the question that seemed to shift everything, it's important to understand why this moment resonated beyond a single episode. Chalamet represents a generation of actors navigating fame in a different era. Transparency is demanded, but privacy is scarce. Every red carpet appearance, every friendship, every offhand comment becomes content. Meanwhile, Joy Behar represents an older school of television, one where direct questioning is part of the job description, where pressing a guest isn't considered rude, but responsible. When those two worlds meet live, sparks are possible. As the conversation continued, viewers at home began noticing subtle cues. A tightening jaw, a clipped response, a moment where Chalamet appeared to pause longer than usual before answering. The energy at the table shifted from casual to cautious. Was it simply a misunderstanding? Was it fatigue from a long press tour? Or was there a deeper frustration simmering beneath the surface? Live television doesn't announce when it's about to become viral. There's no countdown, no warning graphic. Just a question asked in a certain tone, a response delivered in another. And in that studio, with cameras rolling and no edits to save anyone, one question landed differently than expected. What followed would circulate across social media within hours. Clips slowed down, body language analyzed, headlines written. But to understand the snap, the precise moment Timothée Chalamet's composure cracked in front of Joy Behar, we have to look at the tension building long before that exchange. Because sometimes, a live television moment isn't about one question at all. It's about everything that led up to it. And the pressure had been building for weeks. In the weeks leading up to that appearance, Timothée Chalamet was everywhere. Magazine covers, late-night interviews, red carpets, online features dissecting his fashion choices, his friendships, his artistic influences. The promotional cycle for a major film release demands visibility, and Chalamet had become one of the most visible actors of his generation. Each interview added another layer to a public persona that was already under a microscope. What made this particular press tour different was the tone surrounding it. The industry had been shifting. Conversations about celebrity boundaries were growing louder. Actors were increasingly vocal about privacy, about intrusive questions, about the expectation that they not only perform on screen but also perform vulnerability off it. Chalamet had always walked a careful line. He was articulate, often introspective, and generally generous with discussion about his craft. He would break down character preparation, talk about directors with admiration, and reflect on the pressures of early fame. But when interviews drifted toward speculation about his personal life or commentary beyond his work, his responses became noticeably measured. That wasn't new. It was consistent. Meanwhile, The View operates within a different tradition. The show thrives on discussion that goes beyond a movie's plot. The panelists, including Joy Behar, often steer conversations toward cultural context, public narratives, and controversy. For some guests, that shift feels energizing. For others, it feels confrontational. Before the appearance, online chatter had already started. Clips from prior interviews circulated, moments where Chalamet seemed slightly fatigued by repetitive questions. A brief exchange on another program where he redirected a personal question back to his work gained attention. Nothing explosive, just subtle reminders that even the most polished stars are human. Add to that the broader media climate. Social platforms reward conflict. A tense moment can generate millions of views within hours. Talk shows are aware of that dynamic. Guests are aware of it too. Every question carries potential consequences. In that context, walking onto The View is different than stepping onto a late-night stage with pre-approved talking points. The panel format invites unpredictability. Hosts may agree on general themes beforehand, but the conversation flows freely once live. Timothée Chalamet entered that studio with the weight of a press tour behind him. Interviews blur together. Answers repeat. Smiles become automatic. And fatigue, even if subtle, accumulates. Joy Behar, for her part, had built her reputation on candor. She does not shy away from pushing a guest to clarify or defend a point. Over the years, she has questioned politicians, comedians, and actors with equal directness. To her audience, that bluntness is part of the appeal. To some guests, it can feel abrupt. What intensified the stakes that day was the generational contrast. Chalamet represents a cohort that grew up under constant digital scrutiny. His rise coincided with an era where a single comment can be clipped, reframed, and replayed endlessly. Caution is survival. Behar represents traditional broadcast television, where live debate and pointed commentary are foundational. Her style developed long before social media algorithms amplified every micro-expression. Those two approaches aren't inherently incompatible, but they can clash. Reports leading up to the appearance described the interview as a routine stop on a promotional tour. There was no public indication of brewing conflict. No headline suggested an impending confrontation. That's what made the eventual tension more striking. During earlier stops on the tour, Chalamet had addressed serious topics, industry pressures, expectations placed on young actors, and the responsibility that comes with influence. He handled those discussions calmly. But he also emphasized wanting to keep certain parts of his life private. He often redirected to craft, to collaboration, to storytelling. For many actors, The View can feel less like a promotional stop and more like a roundtable debate. Questions can pivot quickly from film to politics, from performance to personal responsibility. The hosts are encouraged to react in real time. Behind the scenes, production teams typically prepare general themes. But live television leaves room for spontaneity. And spontaneity can magnify even small misalignments in tone. As the date approached, social media users speculated about what topics might surface. Would the conversation remain focused on the film? Would broader cultural issues be addressed? Would Behar lean into humor, or would she challenge him more directly? The pressure wasn't explosive. It was atmospheric. Inside the studio that morning, the energy likely felt routine at first. Guests arrive early. Makeup touch-ups. Brief greetings with hosts. Polite exchanges before cameras roll. There's a professionalism that governs these environments. But when you place a highly scrutinized young actor at the peak of visibility across from a host known for pointed questioning, the margin for misunderstanding narrows. And there's another factor that often goes unnoticed: expectation. Audiences tune in to The View expecting lively discussion. They expect the hosts to probe beyond surface-level promotion. They expect authenticity, sometimes friction. At the same time, audiences tuning in for Chalamet expect charm, insight, perhaps even lightness. They follow his career closely. They admire his thoughtfulness. They may not expect visible irritation. When those audience expectations collide in real time, reactions become amplified. As the show prepared to go live, the usual cues would have sounded: countdown, theme music, applause. The segment featuring Timothée Chalamet began like many before it. Smiles exchanged. Friendly introductions. References to his recent accomplishments. But beneath that polished opening, weeks of media saturation and the unspoken tension between promotional messaging and unscripted questioning lingered. Moments like the one that would soon unfold rarely begin with shouting. They begin with subtle shifts. A question phrased slightly differently than anticipated. A follow-up that feels more pointed than playful. A tone that suggests challenge rather than curiosity. And because this was live, there would be no opportunity to recalibrate once the exchange began. No producer stepping in to soften phrasing. No editor trimming an awkward beat. The atmosphere tightened gradually. Viewers at home may not have registered it immediately. But those in the studio likely felt it. That slight hesitation before applause, that fraction of a second where a response seemed delayed. Timothée Chalamet had maintained composure through countless interviews. Joy Behar had navigated decades of live television exchanges. Yet sometimes, experience doesn't prevent tension. It only contains it, until a single question presses just a little too hard. And on that morning, as the conversation edged away from safe territory, it became clear that the next exchange might not follow the familiar script. The stage was set. The cameras were live. All it would take was one line. The shift didn't happen with raised voices. It happened with a question. Up to that point, the conversation had moved predictably. Timothée Chalamet spoke about preparation for the role, the collaboration with directors, the emotional weight of certain scenes. He leaned forward slightly as he answered, hands loosely folded, posture attentive. The studio audience responded with polite laughter and light applause at familiar beats. Then Joy Behar pivoted. Her tone wasn't aggressive. It was conversational. But the subject changed. Instead of craft, she moved toward the broader conversation surrounding him. The intensity of public scrutiny, the narratives that follow young actors, the expectations placed on him beyond performance. It was framed as cultural commentary, but it landed personally. Chalamet listened without interrupting. His expression remained neutral at first, but the rhythm of his blinking slowed. His shoulders, previously relaxed, drew slightly inward. When Behar finished the question, there was a pause, not dramatic, but noticeable. Live television magnifies silence. For a fraction of a second, the studio felt suspended. The other hosts watched him. The audience waited. He began carefully. He spoke about focusing on work, about wanting conversations to remain centered on storytelling. His voice was even, controlled. He avoided specifics, choosing broader language about art and responsibility. It was a professional answer, the kind he had delivered many times before. Behar followed up. The follow-up was shorter, more direct. She referenced how fame inevitably invites deeper questions. She suggested that avoiding certain topics can appear calculated. Her phrasing wasn't accusatory, but it was firm. The implication was clear. Public figures don't get to choose only comfortable conversations. Another pause. This one lasted longer. Chalamet's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He shifted in his chair, one hand moving to the armrest. When he responded, the warmth in his tone had cooled. He clarified that boundaries are not avoidance. That privacy is not performance. He emphasized that actors are not obligated to dissect every aspect of their personal lives simply because cameras are present. His words were measured, but the cadence had changed. The softness was gone. Each sentence landed with sharper edges. The room felt it. Behar leaned back slightly, eyebrows raised, not in hostility, but in challenge. She pressed again, suggesting that audiences connect more deeply when celebrities open up beyond their work. That was the moment. Chalamet exhaled audibly into the microphone. Not dramatically, just enough for viewers at home to hear it. He straightened in his seat and said, calmly but firmly, that connection should come from the work itself. That he values conversation, but not interrogation. That there is a difference between meaningful dialogue and pressure to disclose. The word interrogation hung in the air. A murmur rippled through the audience. It wasn't loud, just a subtle shift in energy. Behar responded quickly, clarifying that asking questions on a talk show isn't interrogation, it's part of the format. Her tone remained steady, but there was an unmistakable tension now threading through the exchange. Chalamet didn't smile. For viewers accustomed to his relaxed charm, that absence was striking. He wasn't angry. He wasn't shouting. But the composure had hardened into something defensive. Another host attempted to lighten the mood, offering a brief comment about balancing fame and privacy. The attempt at humor didn't fully land. The tension lingered. Chalamet nodded politely, but when Behar returned to the point, gently suggesting that public figures benefit from the very visibility they sometimes resist, he interrupted. It wasn't loud, but it was unmistakable. He said, there's a difference between visibility and entitlement. The interruption froze the rhythm of the table. Live television rarely accommodates interruption gracefully. Overlapping voices create chaos. Producers can't cut to commercial without breaking flow. So the cameras stayed fixed. Behar paused. She looked at him directly. Not smiling now, but not combative either. She asked him to elaborate. Chalamet did. He explained that being in films does not equate to surrendering personal boundaries. That audiences can appreciate art without owning the artist. That curiosity is natural, but expectation can cross lines. His delivery was controlled, but the emotion beneath it was visible, not explosive, but restrained. The kind of restraint that suggests a limit has been reached. The audience was quiet. There was no applause, no laughter, just the hum of studio lights and the faint rustle of movement. For a full 2 seconds after he finished speaking, no one spoke. 2 seconds on live television can feel like 20. Behar finally nodded. She acknowledged his perspective. She reiterated that the show's role is to ask questions viewers might be thinking. She maintained composure, steering the tone back toward neutrality. But the shift had already occurred. Chalamet's hands remained clasped tightly together. His posture no longer leaned forward in engagement. It sat upright, guarded. The remaining minutes of the segment moved carefully. Questions returned to the film. Answers were concise. The warmth did not fully return. When the segment concluded and applause signaled transition, the energy felt different from when it began. Clips of that exchange circulated within hours. Not because of shouting, not because of insults, but because of that sharp line, the distinction between visibility and entitlement, delivered live, without edits, without filters. Viewers debated whether he had overreacted or simply asserted a boundary. Others questioned whether the line of inquiry was appropriate. Some defended Behar's role as a host tasked with pressing beyond promotional talking points. But what made the moment viral wasn't volume. It was restraint under pressure, and the visible crack in a carefully managed media persona. The cameras had captured everything. The pauses, the tightened jaw, the interruption, the silence. No edits softened it. No post-production reframed it. And as the show moved on to its next segment, one thing was clear. This wasn't just another promotional interview. It was a live reminder of how quickly tone can shift when expectations collide. But what happened after the cameras cut away, and how that exchange reshaped the conversation around Timothée Chalamet, is where the story truly deepens. Stay with Prime Talk, because the aftermath revealed just how powerful a few unfiltered seconds on live television can be. When the cameras cut to commercial, the applause faded faster than usual. In the studio, there was no dramatic confrontation. No visible argument once the segment ended. But the atmosphere had changed. Staff members moved with professional efficiency, resetting for the next discussion, yet the earlier ease was gone. Audience members exchanged glances. A few whispered. Everyone had felt it. Timothée Chalamet remained seated for a moment before standing. His expression had returned to neutral, but the guarded posture lingered. In live television, adrenaline carries you through tension. Once the lights dim slightly, reality settles in. Joy Behar, seasoned in decades of broadcast unpredictability, maintained composure. She had navigated far more explosive exchanges in her career. But this moment was different. It wasn't loud. It was restrained. And restraint can be more unsettling because it forces viewers to interpret nuance. By the time the episode finished airing, clips of the exchange were already circulating online. The phrase visibility and entitlement became the focal point. Short video edits isolated the pause before he said it. Others highlighted the interruption. Some slowed down the moment of silence that followed. What spread wasn't outrage, it was analysis. Viewers debated whether Chalamet had overstepped by interrupting a host. Others argued he had calmly articulated a boundary that many public figures struggle to define. Comment sections filled with contrasting perspectives. Some defended Joy Behar, pointing out that The View has always operated on open discussion. As a co-host, asking direct questions is not only expected, it's part of the show's identity. From political figures to actors, guests understand that the panel may press beyond rehearsed talking points. Others emphasize generational shifts in celebrity culture. Younger actors today navigate a constant digital microscope. For them, the line between public and private is thinner than ever. What previous generations accepted as part of fame may now feel invasive in a world where social media amplifies every detail. Media outlets covered the exchange cautiously. Headlines described it as tense, awkward, or unexpected. Few framed it as explosive because it wasn't. There was no shouting match. No dramatic walk-off. The power of the moment lay in its subtlety. And subtlety travels differently in the modern media landscape. In follow-up interviews during the same promotional tour, Chalamet did not directly reference the exchange. When asked broadly about boundaries in interviews, he reiterated a familiar theme: appreciation for audiences, but a desire to keep focus on creative work. His tone remained measured. Joy Behar addressed the segment briefly on a later episode, acknowledging that live discussions sometimes bring strong perspectives to the surface. She did not frame it as conflict. Instead, she emphasized the value of open conversation, even when guests push back. That response mattered, because what could have escalated into ongoing friction instead became a case study in live television dynamics. Two experienced professionals held firm to their positions without raising voices. Neither retreated entirely. Neither attacked personally. Yet something had shifted for Chalamet. Public perception subtly recalibrated. Before the interview, he was widely viewed as introspective and soft-spoken. After the exchange, a new descriptor entered the conversation: assertive. For some fans, that was refreshing. They saw a young actor calmly defending personal boundaries on a national platform. For others, the interruption signaled impatience. But what remained undeniable was this: the moment humanized him. Perfectly polished press tours can blur into one another. Carefully curated answers rarely trend. But a visible moment of tension, even restrained, reminds audiences that celebrities are navigating live environments just like anyone else. Industry observers noted something else as well. The exchange reflected a broader cultural tension between media formats and evolving expectations. Traditional talk shows were built on the premise that public figures owe viewers access. Newer generations of artists increasingly challenge that premise, drawing clearer lines around privacy. Neither side is entirely wrong. But when those philosophies meet live, friction becomes possible. For The View, the segment reinforced its reputation as a space where unscripted dialogue can unfold. For Timothée Chalamet, it marked one of the rare instances where his composure visibly tightened under pressure on national television. And that matters in an era where image is currency. In the weeks following the interview, the viral clip continued circulating, often accompanied by commentary about media boundaries. It was used in discussions about how young actors manage fame. It appeared in compilations of tense talk show moments. It became part of the digital footprint of his career. Yet unlike more sensational confrontations in television history, this moment didn't damage reputations. It didn't derail projects. It didn't spark public feuds. Instead, it lingered as a reminder that live television strips away layers, that tone can shift in seconds, that even the most media-trained celebrities have limits. And perhaps most importantly, it demonstrated that confrontation doesn't always require raised voices. Sometimes, the quiet assertion of a boundary is enough to change the energy of a room. Today, when viewers revisit that clip, what stands out isn't hostility. It's the silence, the pause before response, the careful choice of words under pressure. Those details are what make live television compelling. Unfiltered reactions, unscripted pauses, human moments unfolding in real time. For Timothée Chalamet, the exchange with Joy Behar became one of those defining live TV snapshots, not because it was explosive, but because it revealed something real. For audiences, it offered a glimpse into the evolving relationship between celebrity and media, a negotiation still unfolding. And for anyone who watches talk shows expecting predictability, it served as proof that one question, delivered at the right moment, can shift everything. If you want more deep dives into the live television moments that reshape public perception, subscribe to Prime Talk, like this video, share it with others, and join the conversation in the comments below. Because sometimes, the most powerful stories aren't the loudest ones. They are the ones that happen in the quiet space between a question and an answer.